You are listening to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss our RC adventures.
Welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss the ups and downs of the new RC Flyer. Join your hosts, Michael and Jay, as they take flight at the park. Now on with the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast. I'm Michael from Arizona, and with me always, my good friends,
Shannon G and Mesa AZ.
And we are missing our good friend Jay. We want to send a shout out to him. His mother passed away, and it was kind of sudden, and so he's off taking care of some of family events. And I told him we definitely would excuse him for that. So we shout out to Jay in the hills of Texas. And our prayers go with him and his family for their loss. So, however, we do have a guest with us tonight. We are welcoming Tim Dickey. He is a pilot for the USA World Championship. I think it's F4 World Championship team. And we had talked about him before on the podcast. As a matter of fact, when he was over in Romania, and I think we're lucky enough to have him on the show. So, Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to join. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, not a problem. We appreciate you taking the time. It is always a pleasure to hear from, USA team winners, right? You guys won some awards over there?
Yeah. Yes, we did. So.
Good. Well, why don't you take us through kind of that whole process, and then we can kind of interject with a few questions of our own. But how did you get lined up on the team? That's my first big question.
Yeah. So maybe even starting a little bit before that, the U.S. did not have fielded a team in scale for 12 years.
Wow.
So there was a number of us that got together and talked about potentially fielding a team, kicked the idea around, and talked to the AMA about what's required, because there was actually only one member of our team that had participated before. So we decided to move forward, and the process from a team forming perspective really begins with the trials. And the trials for the 2024 team actually happened at the Nationals at the AMA field in Muncie.
Oh, gotcha.
So it was roughly a year prior to the contest, so that would have been 2023. The trials were in Muncie, and the team then was formed from that.
Okay.
So yeah. And the team is composed of, there's actually there's three different, actually two different types of competition that we fielded in F4. There's the control line competition, which we had three competitors from the U.S. this time around. Mm-hmm. And then on the RC side, there are actually two categories, F4C and F4H. F4H is very similar to the type of flying and competitions that we do in the U.S., and then F4C is much more in-depth and detailed. So we fielded a full team in F4H of 3 people, and then 1 person in F4C. So there were 7 competitors total.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, that is nice. And then they all had to compete for a spot on the team, right? They had to win. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. So last year it was sort of interwoven within the nationals, yearly nationals competition. Mm-hmm. The tryouts for 2026, which will happen next year, is going to be a little bit more segregated, if you will, so that we don't have to kind of interrupt the normal progression of the nationals competition to have the folks that are trying out for the world team to deal with. So yeah.
That's very, very cool. Now, how kind of going either a little bit further back, how did you get involved in the building and getting things kind of started to where you wanted to go to the competition?
Yeah. So the competitive spark in me really started with our local Scale Masters qualifier at our field, which is Gunsmoke.
Right.
And I was just kind of I think I had been a member of the club about a year, maybe a year and a half. shown a little bit of interest in flying what loosely resembled scale models.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody had suggested that I go out to the Gunsmoke event and just kind of walk around, check it out. Well, that was the beginning of where I am today. So yeah, from there I teamed up with a longtime scale competitor who's still my mentor today, Charlie Nelson.
A
We
legend.
spent many
Yeah.
hours at the field
Yeah.
practicing. So,
Huh.
so yeah. And
Now,
then from
were you,
there, I just started kind of traveling around to different events and meeting different people and kind
right.
of, just having a good time, frankly. And
Yeah.
then I joined the NASA organization, which is a special interest group from the AMA, and NASA is the one that sponsored and held the trials for the world team. So that's kind of the connection there, if you will.
Gotcha.
Uh,
Now, were you a like a model builder from before, or did you do any type of RC stuff prior to getting into this?
Not really RC stuff. I did control line stuff. I did a lot of model building as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
static models,
Mm-hmm.
but never really RC. Actually, the
Right.
first RC airplane I had was let's see, maybe it was the little white Cub with the blue letters on it. I forget who
Oh,
made it.
the Park Zone or
Oh yeah,
the
Yeah, the
Park
Park
Hobby
Zone.
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 Yeah, Hobby
Yeah,
Zone.
yeah, yeah. And from there, I took it. I painted it yellow. I put some stripes on it. I added ailerons, and then it was kind of took off from there. So,
Right. Everybody wants
yeah,
to modify their project. Yeah.
Yep.
yeah.
I get
I'm
it.
not a long time scale builder by any sense of the imagination, or builder at all, frankly. So
Right.
I just
Right.
kind of dove into it.
Huh.
So,
That's
yeah,
that's crazy. That's great though, and
yeah,
to be able to do it in such a short time, even.
yeah.
Mhm.
It's been an exciting ride. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's very, very cool.
So you want to talk a little bit about now the competition itself?
Yeah, yeah. Tell us a little bit about it, because
Yeah.
I've heard about it, and I've been in the RC world for a long, long time, but I've
Uh-huh.
not on the competition side. So yeah, it'll
Sure.
be interesting. What kind of run us through some of that?
Sure. So after the trials, during the trials themselves, you're actually not required to fly in the world championship the model that you flew in trials. So, for example, if your model is not ready, the one that you're planning to fly in the world championships is not ready, you can fly another one, albeit it has to still meet the requirements of being less than 33 pounds.
Right.
And the judging criteria is still the same. So it's not a requirement to do that. And that's exactly what I did. I did not have my model ready.
Mm-hmm.
So I flew actually a Charlie Nelson Piper Cub, if you will, during the trials. And then after that, I worked feverishly to get my model ready for the trip to Romania.
Hmm.
Uh, and you know the logistics associated with transferring a model, if you will, boxing it up, creating it up, tearing it down, creating it up,
Right.
and then once you get it over there, putting together is a job in itself.
Right.
We as a team did a fair amount of how should I say back and forth on how to best create and ship our models.
Mm-hmm.
We actually started out with what we thought was an agreement to utilize what's uh, called sporting goods. So a sporting goods type of label, if you will, that gives us some latitude in terms of the weight and the size requirements to check it on commercial flights.
Right.
Uh, the reality of the situation was that it turned out we were not able to get that designation, if you will. Similar things like bicycles, baseball equipment, those sorts of things. So the airlines today aren't recognizing model aircraft as a sport yet. So,
Sure.
but
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
yeah. So we cycled around, talked to FedEx, UPS, other freight companies, and where we actually ended up with FedEx. And so we weren't constrained by the weight or the size requirements. However, the more it weighs, the larger it is, the more it costs.
Right.
Uh, so with that being said, we then went off and built our boxes, figured out how to take our models apart, wrap them up, pack them up, put them together, and then to get all the paperwork associated with transporting a model across the international boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So that happened. The models all arrived. They all arrived pretty much intact. There were a couple of dings and dents and actually holes in some of the crates, but the models themselves were not damaged. Um, so at this point, we're in a full-scale hangar in Romania. We arrive. Our crates are all sitting there in the corner. We take the crates, we start unpacking them, and at that point, we really start to get excited. It's like
Sure.
finally here we are. We're looking
Rubber's hitting the
around.
road.
Right.
Yeah. There's all these other people from all these other countries, that are doing the same, and we're talking and chatting, and the adrenaline's starting to pump, and we're all excited. So we got them put together, did some practice flights, uh, and the runway, as I mentioned, it was a full-scale runway. So we were flying off of asphalt, and we literally in a hangar. So we would take our models, put them onto a trailer that was actually pulled by a World War II motorcycle with a sidecar.
Oh,
Oh,
very
cool.
cool.
That was kind of cool. Yeah, in Romania. And by the way, the setting in Romania is one of which it was the area was a huge oil field and with a number of refineries during the war, and it was heavily bombed by B-24s at that time, and rebuilt and bombed and rebuilt and bombed. And when you drive into the area, you can literally smell the oil because they still uh, the refineries are still in operation today. So that's kind of the backdrop. And then this full-scale airport there, they have a training program set up. So they're running their training program up until 12 o'clock. And then after 12 o'clock in the afternoon, as the wind starts to come up, we get the field for our competition. So,
Naturally.
so we literally had to put our models on a trailer, get it cycled out to the runway, and then you fly from there. There was a judge's tent set up, and we would bring our chairs out there and sit. And by 12, 1 o'clock, it was beginning to get hot and windy both. So the conditions weren't ideal, if you will, for a competition, but they were what they
Sure.
Funny how that always happens, even here.
Yeah.
were. Yeah. Uh, so yeah, the flying was good. Actually, maybe the static first. So the static. So there's two components to a RC scale model contest. One is the static judging. The other one is the flying. Uh, uh, we typically do the static judging first, and we were well aware of the fact that at the international level, the judging is much, much, much more in depth, if you will. And actually, the class that I competed in, the judges are able to walk right up to the model at zero distance to do their judging with the documentation in hand. So that was new, sort of a new space, if you will.
Right.
But it was very intense. Three judges, they judge all of the same craftsmanship, color, outline, and color outline and markings. All three of them judge each of those three categories. And frankly, actually, one of the judges couldn't speak English. The other one spoke broken English, which is fine. I was prepped to expect that and to adjust the documentation accordingly.
Right.
But it was really cool, getting to talk with, to interface with judges like that.
But you all spoke aviation. That's the important part.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, 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 yeah.
You
And then
just
after I got
I was
done,
inverted and we were communicating.
after my first flying round, they actually do some weight checks. So after the static, you then walk your model back, and after static judging, you then walk your model back into the hangar, and they come around with a scale to make sure that your model is less than a lot of 33 pounds.
Mhm.
Well, they did that 2 or 3 times throughout the contest just to make sure that everybody was on the up and up, and not perhaps adding things after static that could enable their model to fly better during the flying portion of the contest.
Hmm.
But what I was going to say is after the first round, I circled back around with the judges, two of the judges, and got to spend about 45 minutes with them going through my documentation, my model. So that was really cool getting their feedback like that.
That was cool. Yeah, anytime you can get feedback from world level judges, that just makes you that much better when you come back.
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
in that situation, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep, and I know exactly at least what these three judges expect to see improved in my model for the next
Sure.
time around. So.
It's very cool.
Now,
And
what was your final? I forgot what your final position was.
yeah, so my goals going in were the top 5 in static judging and the top 10 in flight. I finished exactly 5th in static. And after seeing some of the models and their, talking with some of the competitors, I think going in with the goal of top 5 in static was pretty naive of me, but I
Yeah.
achieved that because there were some beautiful models there. And then I got 8th in flying. So
Wow,
Nice.
at least you got both goals.
yeah, yeah,
Golf.
yeah.
Yeah. Golf
Congratulations.
clap.
So just to kind of finish up on the topic of inspecting the models, I mentioned they do for the weight. I also found it interesting, they inspect the models for GPS systems as well.
Oh.
And they did find, I know of at least one, I think maybe two that they detected and they uncovered in the models, and the competitors were actually disqualified for those.
Holy
So they take
smokes.
it very, very seriously. And the judging overall, I was very impressed with.
Hmm.
Very impressed.
Now, were you allowed like gyro, or was that kind of the GPS, was that tied together, or was a gyro system allowed, stabilization or not?
Yes. So
Okay.
stabilization, any sort, any kind, is allowed completely, 100%.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what would be the benefit for the GPS for this? What was the logic behind that at this level? I don't know. It's curious.
Well, I've not utilized GPS before, okay, but my understanding is the way that it's utilized is you go out and fly a couple rounds and you set points into your system, and then it's able to utilize those set points and to navigate itself
Oh,
around.
okay.
Oh,
That
yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense
yeah,
now.
yeah. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
because you
all
can,
learning for me as well.
yeah, some of the bigger airplanes that you can write an Arduino card for them and they can actually fly that same, like a quad, right? You just send it out there and it does it.
Yeah.
So it'll have, it's not like an autopilot, but it's close. It's really close. You can get very consistent if you're going around it.
Mhm.
And I know my GPS system and some of my larger scale jets, I have a Bluetooth headset that I wear and they'll actually tell me speeds, altitudes, that kind of thing too. So I could see how they would frown upon that if they were trying to get you to fly it
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah. Well, that was interesting, but
Yeah.
the variation in models was also very interesting as well. I was flying a Waco, and there
Hmm.
weren't that many sort of classic kind of non-civilian models. But the mix between jets and prop planes was probably maybe 30-70, 40-60 in
Hmm.
favor of prop planes. So a lot of prop planes and a lot of biplanes. Biplanes seem very popular. And
Oh,
one thing that I was told after or during the event was that during the static judging, the judges tend to view them as a little, how should I say, a little more challenging from a complexity perspective to build.
yeah,
So
sure.
that's why competitors kind of trended in that direction.
Hmm. That makes sense. I can see that too. I mean, because you got flying wires and a bunch of other, cabane struts and stuff that need to be perfect. Where if you had a monoplane, you wouldn't have any of that.
Yep, yep. And
So,
the other thing was that I heard, but it really became prevalent as I talked to some of the other competitors, is that in general, I mean, and not all of the competitors meet this, but in general, the strategy that I see is one of building a model, getting a baseline set of feedback, and based on that, maybe one competition based on that feedback, either decide to continue to evolve that model going forward or to completely scratch it and restart. But the goal is always to, you know, establish a model and then refine it. And if that initial feedback that you get from the first round, first event, is you feel like that you're not going to be able to evolve it, then you scrap it and go to another one.
hmm.
In the US, it's very much of, you build a model and then you build the next one and the next one and the next one, and you just kind of continue.
Right.
So what you're going to see me specifically is continuing with that sort of a strategy whereby now I'll take my model and I'll just continue to refine it. I won't invest another 2.5 years to build another one, at least not
Right.
yet anyway. So,
Yeah, because I've seen your model many
mhm.
times from the time you started working on it. You'd bring it out to the field, and it was just a work of art.
Yeah.
You learned new techniques, you learn new trade to do this from what you're traditional used to in modeling and in life, and it's just really cool that you took that on yourself to do that. So I always we when I started helping out with the podcast, like we got to really show the rest of this hobby going on around us because it's just amazing. And
Mhm, mhm.
the fact that you're fairly new to the hobby compared to me and Mike. We've been in this thing for a long time, and
Uh,
you're only in a couple years and you're at the world level. So
Yeah.
hats off to you.
Well,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So,
Yeah.
so this is kind of a weird question, but it does interest me because, an airplane starts internally and moves out, and I'm sure that's how your airplane went, right? So when you said you're going to continue to refine it, let's say that they got with you and said, "Hey, your ribs were 2 millimeters farther apart than they should have been." That's something that's going to require you to tear the wing down, rebuild the wing. Is it that type of level of refining, or is it the fact that maybe there was some weathering that didn't look the same, or maybe the
Mhm.
strut wasn't totally like the turnbuckles weren't really the way that they should have looked, or that kind of thing? I mean,
Yeah.
how deep do they go into that?
Okay. Yeah. That's a very good question, and you hit the nail on the head. If there are faults in the outline associated with the structure of the model, whether it's the ribs or maybe the shape of the tail boom, or maybe your stab is a little too forward, then it gets to be a big deal to address, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I've chose to address that is I actually picked a subject for which there are full-scale drawings available from the manufacturer. So my Waco is a 1932 model Waco, so I went to the Smithsonian, who houses all of the plans. Waco effectively gave them all of their plans to house. So they sell copies of those plans to individuals, primarily in the full-scale spaces, they're
Mm-hmm.
restoring these things. So I had all of the factory drawings, plans, and the big ones that are most interesting, for the fuselage and the wings, they all just happen to be at quarter scale, which is what I was, building my model to.
How
So
convenient.
my scores on outline were very good, and I frankly I expected them to be because I literally copied those plans, put them right on my building board, and then built the airplane right over the top of the 1932
Right.
plane.
Right.
So, um, so yeah, I mean, there were things like, the width of some of the striping that I had was a little bit wide, so I'll go back and fix that.
Gotcha.
Uh, I think another one was the shape of uh, not the struts, but the wheel pants. The shape of the wheel pants was a little off as well. Um, and just to kind of put it in the context, what I was told, and it does indeed seem like reality, is not to expect any tens, regardless of what place you are and who you are. And what I was told is that a score of 10 or a perfect score in any of the static judging criteria is held for the full scale model itself. And I was in fifth place static wise, and I did not get a single 10. I don't even think I got a 9.5.
Really?
Hmm.
Wow.
But yeah, that's
Huh.
out of uh, a couple of hundred possible. So it's very, very, very intense, and they're right up there with the documentation, with the pictures, looking right at it.
So
And
so
then
having said that, then there is no such thing as a perfect score then, is there?
no, no, no,
Okay. So it's
no.
only as
And they,
close to perfect as you can get.
yeah. Now they normalize the scores. They'll take the highest and they'll divide everybody else's by the highest. So there is a perfect thousand, but it's all
Gotcha.
normalized. Yeah.
Okay.
Right, right, right. Okay. So what was the high overall the first place winner? What was his highest score? I mean, I assume that there's different like there's a form with like 10 scores, but
Hmm.
what was the highest score that they were able to give someone in the model?
Out of 1,000, I think it was a 940, something
Wow,
like
so
that.
that's pretty close. I mean,
Yeah,
940 is getting way up there.
yeah,
I just
yeah.
had visions of it being down in the six, seven, and eights hundreds as opposed to something in
No,
the eight, nine, or tens. But you just won't see a 10 because it's reserved for the actual real aircraft, right?
that's what I've been told. Now, I
Okay,
didn't see any tens on my scorecard. I know
right.
that.
Yeah, no,
So,
I get it. I understand.
yeah,
So, wow, that's pretty amazing that they're able to do that. So,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
crazy.
And the other thing that was interesting is, the competition was held in Eastern Europe, obviously in Romania, but I didn't really connect the dots in terms of how close knit the European modelers are. I mean, they all
Mhm.
knew each other. I assume they probably go from event to event around Europe. They have the
Sure.
European national championships. So, but that being said, they very much were happy that the U.S. was competing again, and they
Right.
made us feel very much at home. So,
That's very cool. Yeah, we have that
Awesome.
same problem in the full scale world because it's no different. We have 50 states. So when you run around the United States, you might meet the same guys from all these states. You just have to pick that up and put it in different countries. And all those guys
uh,
are, I mean, the whole European country could fit inside the United States. So it's like those
yeah,
guys see each other all the time.
yeah,
And it is kind of weird when you do a world level competition that all these people seem to know each other, competed against each other. They've done it for years. And you're like, this kind of the guy that's standing over here going, what's going on? I don't know any of these people, but it does make sense. And after one or two competitions, I know our guys have gotten to be friends with others, and they tend to overlap and talk to each other and keep in touch.
yeah. I would say about half of those European teams they actually showed up in van campers.
Yeah,
There
Oh
was a
wow.
campground, and by the way, I'm looking to get one. More than likely, I will get one. But yeah, there was a camping area set up, and they all popped the top with the.
So they call that caravanning over there. Is that
Uh-huh.
what they call
yeah,
it? Yeah.
Yeah,
caravanning.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's true. Very, very true.
What you need is a cargo plane. You need to get a cargo plane to
Yeah.
haul all the planes over next time. Maybe we can
Yeah, that's
find
true.
a sponsor for that.
So I'll tell you a
Yeah.
little bit of another aspect of the event was what they call Nations Night.
Mm.
And Nations Night is it's a celebratory kind of get together in the evening. Each of the teams brings something associated with their country to eat, drink, or share.
Oh, nice.
And normally it's a drink, and normally it turns into a kind of take your competitive spirit and put it aside for an evening and have some drinks and fun. So
Sure.
we actually managed to bring over some American bourbon.
Ah,
So we had 4 bottles of bourbon and some Cracker Jacks and some other things that we shared, and that was very well received as well. So.
That's
I can
awesome.
only imagine. It's
So
very
yeah, but
cool.
no, that was a very good time also.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, once they got done with the static judging, and everybody kind of you don't really know your static scores until the end, I assume, right? But then you move from the static part to a flying part, or is it only static?
No, you move from the static part to the flying part then, and it's customary not to release, as you pointed out, not to release the static scores until after the first round of flying,
Mm-hmm.
and that's even the case in the U.S. as well.
Oh,
So that's what they did in this case also. So after everybody had completed one round of flying, they posted not only the first round flying scores but also the static scores at the same time.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. And then you were able to fly. Did you fly your Waco, or did you fly? You have to fly the airplane that you statically show, right?
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. Yep, yep. I flew the Waco.
And were there certain
The
maneuvers you had to do?
Mhm. Yeah, the major differences first before we go into my specific maneuvers are within the contest here in the U.S. You're required to do really 9 maneuvers, and then the 10th one is really a scoring of the realism that your model exhibited. In international competition, you're required to fly uh, what I would coin 10 legitimate maneuvers, and then realism is an 11th one.
Oh, okay.
They fly 3 rounds, and then they take the top two flight scores that you get, and they roll that in with your static for your overall. Some of the things that well, actually, yeah. So my maneuvers for a 1932 Waco are obviously not very exciting. Okay, but takeoff, landing, fly pass, do a climbing 180, a descending 360, uh, uh, lazy 8, and then I do a service stall, let the plane stall and fall.
Hmm.
But some of the things that we observed that were different than what is done in the U.S. are, first of all, the models themselves. The competitors were flying further away than what we normally would do in the U.S. and higher, and so that was one of the observations that we had. The second one, and I'll work on practicing that in the future. But the other one was, in order to make the routine really flow, instead of doing a circular pattern, if you will, so upwind and then downwind coming back and doing your maneuver and kind of going around, they fly the maneuver in front of the judges, and then they do some sort of a turnaround maneuver, come back the other direction and fly a maneuver, and it's more back and forth. What we were told is that in general, the judges like to see that because it kind of makes the whole routine flow versus having that downtime on the downwind, just kind of sitting, twiddling your fingers. So I'm not sure what kind of turnaround maneuvers I can do with the Waco cabin, but we're gonna looking at finding some. So
Outside
that was
inverted snap roll back to
Yeah.
the as
Half
your
Cuban
airplane
8.
blows apart.
Lam
That's funny.
Shavak.
Yeah, Lam
The other
Shavak.
thing was that was very apparent is the number of lazy 8s that were done. It was astounding. I was truly amazed. I mean, then and the reasoning that we finally had heard from the competitors was that's the maneuver that if you're not a jet, that you really get to exhibit your flying skills to the judges, and that was really the big bang maneuver, if you will, in the routine.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of lazy 8s.
Yeah. Now everybody got an individual score, and then was there a total score for like a team score where they took all of the scores, or was it just where they placed individually?
It's actually both. So yeah,
okay.
there's individuals, and then there are team scores. So they take the scores from the 3 team members in each of the classes, add those together, and that's the team score for that particular country.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah,
U.S.
the U.S.
placed.
The 5th in F4H, 5th place. Yeah.
Fifth
Nice.
place. Very nice.
And in F4C, I was the only competitor, so obviously we didn't do very good.
Yeah.
And then on the control line side, the team actually won.
Oh, wow.
They placed first in team,
Oh,
as well
that's
as
cool.
in individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, the control line team did very well.
Huh. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, maybe you want to get one of those guys on here to talk as well,
Yeah,
because
that
we're
would be
spending
Sure.
most of the time on RC, right?
Yeah.
I might get dizzy though, going around like that. That's the only
Too,
problem.
like, all right.
Yeah, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
That was
But we by the way, we all traveled as one team. The control line and the RC guys, we all stayed at the same hotel and rental cars, so it was all literally one big team.
that's very cool. That was control. That was my entry into the RC world when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, maybe 10.
Same.
My dad bought me one of those Cox, little red P-51 looking things or whatever it was. And my uncle was a pilot in Vietnam. And so he came over for Christmas and said, "Oh, let me show you how to do this." Right. And so we took it outside, and we lived on a little cul-de-sac, and he cranked that thing up, and I was holding it, and he was going to fly it around, show me how to fly it. And I let go of that thing, and it took off, went straight up in the air. And as it came down the other side, the curbs, we were too close to the curb. So it just hammered it just like smashed face
Shattered.
first into the curb. And he looked at it and he goes, "Well, that doesn't seem right." He hands it to me and walks off. And I'm standing there with my Christmas gift just in shattered pieces. So,
well, you've come
my
so
mom,
far.
I know my mom bought me basically a membership into the Model of the Month Club. So for testers. And so every month I got a model. So then I learned to fix the stuff and build it, and eventually went on to compete like in the state fair and that kind of thing with static models. So it's kind of how I got into the whole thing, and where my building skills come from. So I have total respect for someone that can jump into this thing and actually win, competitions building from scratch. And you can't really see it on my table, but I've got plans sitting on the table next to me over here with a big bear cat that I'm working on. So
Oh,
it's
cool.
it's difficult. I'm kind of stalled out at the moment because I got so many projects, but it is coming along slowly but surely.
Mm. I tell you, one of the other things that has really, I mean, through competing at the international level, and more specifically building with a weight requirement of 33 pounds, has really enabled me to grow in terms of model building to what is truly required to meet the structural requirements versus over designing and ending up with a very heavy model.
Right.
I have learned so much about that, and I'm applying that now to one of my models. It is heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I've uncovered it, starting chopping away with an understanding now of what's truly required.
Right.
So yeah,
That's
I mean,
very
well,
cool.
we complain a lot about, hey, this 33-pound thing, as the team members in the U.S. were beginning to build. At the end of the day, for me, it was a great experience.
Well, good. Well, good.
Nice.
Well, that is very exciting, and we're so happy that you were able to go and at least bring back some some medal, fifth place or whatever it would be. But yeah, that's still, it gets you ready to go for next year, and I'm sure you'll be even better next year. Do you know where they're holding it coming up?
Yeah, they hold it every 2 years. In 2026, it's going to be in the UK.
Okay,
So
a
at
little
a
closer.
field that is being touted as the nicest grass RC field in the world. So we'll
Sweet.
see.
I'm sure that is the Brits, man. They've got it going on over there as far as the grass fields.
We'll have to see if we can cover it live, Mike.
Yeah.
I think we should go.
Yeah, that's true.
Do
I
the
should go.
play-by-play.
There you go. Yeah.
That's so funny. Well, we try to stay around 30 minutes. We appreciate you joining us. It is awesome to have Tim on and to hear his stories. And man, we could talk to you for hours, I'm sure. But we would love to see you out at the field. And congratulations once again. Welcome back to the U.S. after a long flight. I know those flights are pretty long. I've done one or two myself.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to participate in the.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Yeah,
We really
thank you very
appreciate it.
much. So, well, in closing our show, once again, a shout out to Jay. We appreciate him and all that he does, and we're letting him off this week. But hopefully, he'll be back here sometime soon. And got anything on the horizon there, Shannon? Anything coming up?
We've got the Jet Rally.
Right.
We have the Jet Rally coming up here in a few weeks, so maybe we'll talk about that on the next show. And of course, AEF in early February 2025. So
I got my AEF.
It's rolling. So do I.
Getting ready. All righty. Well, cool. Well, here from Arizona, I'm Michael.
And Shannon G and Mesa AZ.
And we got Tim with us as well. So we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Let's fly.
You have been listening to the Park Flyer Podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your next visit. Please give our show a star rating and review, and feel free to email us your questions, topics, or suggestions to parkflyerpodcast@gmail.com.